Right. Hello, everybody. I know people are hopping in, but I wanted to welcome you to our first AI and talent management session. I'm going to get our slides queued up here if I can get this to work. Um, so thank you, everybody, for popping on today to talk about AI and talent management. This is a first in a four-part series. Um, on using AI in a bunch of different ways in talent management. And today we're going to talk about my area of expertise and the area where I spend all my time in terms of teaching, research, and talking with organizations around employee attraction and mobility. I'm JR Keller. I'm an associate professor of human resource studies here at the ILR School at Cornell University. I'm also the associate director of research and corporate outreach at ILR Wide, which is one of our newer institutes aimed at improving inclusivity, diversity, and equity within organizations. So just a quick primer. There is so much going on in the world of AI in the realm of employee interaction and mobility. There is no way that we can possibly cover all of this in the next 29 minutes. So what I'm going to do is highlight the things that pop up most often in the conversations we have with CAHRS, with companies, the questions we're getting from our students and the companies that are recruiting our students, the types of topics that we're starting to spend more time engaging in our own research with, and that we're teaching in the classroom. So again, consider this a very broad survey of the landscape. And I thought where we would start is noting how you can participate today. One, you can certainly use the Q&A feature to send those questions into me. I'll do my best to answer those as they come in. You can also use the chat feature where you can not only chat with me, but you can chat with each other, which would be terrific. So I would like to start by talking about the practical applications of artificial intelligence and related technologies in the attraction space. One of the biggest areas that we see AI being leveraged is in support of trying to deliver a better candidate experience. And I'll try to break this down into what I see as three of the big buckets here. The first is the use of AI chatbots, right? And the idea here is that these are meant to help answer candidate questions when they have them, and that they are on demand 24/7, right? So you can log on to a company's career website where a chatbot will pop up. It can help serve you up job opportunities. It can answer questions about the skills and experience. Once you've applied for the role, it can give you updates, right, on the status of your application. And one of the biggest things for recruiters is that it helps with automated interview scheduling, right? So that you don't have to have a million emails back and forth or phone conversations with candidates simply to schedule interviews, right? And some of you, right, at really large organizations out there, that tends to take up a ton of time. So this can be a real big time saver and helps candidates, right, feel like they're being paid attention to very quickly. I think one of the really cool applications here is when we think about this idea of personalized candidate outreach. So platforms such as LinkedIn and others will now pull information off of candidates' profiles and allow you to create what feels like a much more customized email to them, right? So being able to reference specific skills and experiences or jobs that they've had in the past, note what's about your company, what's likely to resonate with them as candidates. And so it makes for a much more automated yet still high touch candidate experience, right? In service of, right, getting candidates to write back and respond to those inquiries, which they're much more likely to do. A couple of other things in terms of managing the flow of applicants is, I know a lot of you who process tons and tons of applications. It's so easy for candidates just to click easy apply in LinkedIn and send over their profile or their resume to you. Oftentimes, if we can spend time sifting through these resumes, we see that folks who have applied to one job might not be a great fit for that particular job, but could be a great fit for another job in the organization, right? And some of the AI technologies are really good at actually redirecting those applications to jobs where they're more likely to be a better fit. It also, right, enables you to really manage a talent hub. Right, one of the big challenges is we get all these great applications in. Not all of those individuals are going to get interviewed or get hired. But what do we do with this pool of individuals that have expressed interest in the organization, but we've had to reject them for one reason or another? This actually enables you to keep in touch with those candidates, right, and alert them when new jobs get posted that could meet their skills and interests, right? So it's sort of a constant engagement with unsuccessful candidates. Another application of AI in the attraction and hiring space is writing better job descriptions, right? This is one of the more tedious tasks that we do within the HR space, but it is super important because it is often the #1 source of information candidates use to decide whether or not to actually apply to your organization. So one of the ways that this has been employed for years now, it's much more widely available though, is thinking really carefully about the language that is used in these job postings to make sure that they're inclusive, and especially that you're not using particular gendered language that might turn off potential applicants. Beyond just a focus on gendered language, these models are able to look at which job postings have received positive responses in the past and then update that language, right, to reflect those postings so that you're using the kind of language that we know generates interest from the candidates that we're looking for. And then a small piece, but something that's really important, is within organizations, right, we could use some of these AI models to actually identify the skills of the people working in the jobs, to update that into the job description so that instead of simply pulling out the same job description that we used 2 years ago, now that this job has become open in 2024, what skills are the people that are in that job? What do they have? What are they currently using? And so it's sort of a constantly updating model, which means our job descriptions are fresh, right, and attracting the right individuals with the right skills. Right, AI is also great at evaluating candidate applications, right? So as we get tons of applications in, this has often been built into to human resource information systems. I will note there is some skepticism around how well algorithms can evaluate resumes. A colleague of mine at Columbia University, Bo Cowgill, worked with a large tech company to actually analyze whether humans or machine learning algorithms selected better candidates. And I will show you the results here. They found that the introduction of a machine learning technology yielded candidates that were 14% more likely to pass interviews and receive a job offer, 18% more likely to actually accept those job offers when they got them, 12% less likely to show evidence of competing job offers, and were also, right, maybe most importantly, more productive once they were hired as employers. And it's really useful to understand why that happened, right? And this is the way that Bo summarizes this, and I don't think I can say it any better, is that it found candidates that are broadly non-traditional, particularly candidates who graduated from non-elite colleges, who lack job referrals, who lack prior experience, or whose credentials are atypical, and those who have strong non-cognitive soft skills. So it's a great job at identifying aspects of candidates that human evaluators find it very easy to overlook. So some real promise here in the evaluation space. It's also been used to sort of reinvent interviews. As much as our undergraduate and graduate students dislike the use of HireVue and other automated interviewing softwares, it has done wonders for allowing organizations to actually interview at scale and gather more information about candidates than they could simply through a resume review. A newer sort of evolution of these tools is what I call AI co-pilot experience. One of our former alums here at ILR founded a company called BrightHire, which I think is a really nice example of this. This AI technology is meant to complement video interviews, so live video interviews. And the idea here is that it provides diagnostics on how the interview is actually happening to train interviewers to get better interviews in the future. It also, right, automatically takes notes, much like Zoom would take notes for this meeting if we turn that feature on, so that as an interviewer, you can focus on the interview itself and follow the interview guide as opposed to spending your time furiously scribbling down notes on the candidate. And it can do really interesting things in terms of analyzing the text of the conversations. So this was a recent post by BrightHire, which found that female recruiters, when engaging in interviewing potential sales reps, were much more likely to bring up candidate compensation expectations in the first interview than their male counterparts. So then you could use those insights, right, to train interviewers on addressing the type of topics that you want and at what point and stage of the interview process. AI can also help to support internal mobility in a couple of really important ways. And really, I think about these as pairing together in terms of suggesting jobs and career paths and personalized development plans. You know, as all of us who work in large organizations know, they are not very stable. We are constantly reorganized in hierarchical levels, business units. We're adding organizations, we're spinning off organizations. And so it is really hard to develop really clear, stable career paths within an organization. So what tools like Phenom are able to do are to identify the skills that link between jobs in the organization and do that in real time, so that an individual right here in an associate product management role can look at, if they were to, their next natural role were to be a project manager, that then what would that job set them up to do in the future? It sort of opens up the range of possibilities for internal candidates and employees to understand what their career path in the organization might look like. And this is hugely important because the number one reason that employees leave organizations is for a lack of development opportunities and opportunities for career advancement. And so these tools, simply by showing that there are multiple paths to get where an employee wants at the organization, have tremendous potential, right, to increase retention and employee satisfaction. And where these go the extra mile is where you can tie, right, the link between the role that somebody is in and where they want to get down the road with potential learning opportunities. So in this, case on here, I know the numbers are a little bit fuzzy, but if this individual right now is in an associate product manager role, would like to end up here as a director of product management, right now, right, they only have about 58% of the skills for that job, right? So how are they going to fill those other 42%? Well, you can link this to learning management systems, and it will suggest learnings, right, that will help them develop and demonstrate those competencies, right? So that might be something like LinkedIn Learning, if that's what you're using as an organization. It could actually point you to specialized development programs, like mid-career, early career, late career development programs within your organization. But not only providing what the paths might look like, but how you can support taking the path that you want. Right, so this is sort of this arrow here that we put on here. And I think it's really important to think about as TA mobility professionals, how we can sort of support and help with the integration of these to accomplish the goals that we want. And one of the big things here is to really understand what makes you unique as an organization, right? So really understanding what's unique about our company culture, what's unique about our jobs, what's unique about our particular employees and the type of candidates that we want to attract. Because, if you think about things like job postings, you can use data from LinkedIn to figure out, like LinkedIn will help you create job postings that it knows have attracted candidates to other organizations in the past. But that's going to end up being a very generic job description, right, that appeals to everybody, but doesn't have anything specific about your organization. So being able to use the AI to create sort of the template and then customize that with the information you want to attract the candidates that you want to attract is going to be the one really powerful way to to really humanize the process and make it much more effective. The other piece, one of the things that I think might be most important, even though I have it listed second here, is leading conversations around transparency and explainability. So this is a really great article that was really written about the potential limitations of artificial intelligence and machine learning in organizations by a bunch of IO psychologists. And they highlighted two things here. One is that algorithms are to some extent a black box, so that it's often unclear to us as we implement them how they work, but then even harder then to explain to candidates how they're being deployed. And partly for that reason, there are lots of unfavorable reactions toward the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning in the evaluation and screening process. And I just want to show you a little bit of data around this, because I think this is super powerful. We're a group of our colleagues who did 5 studies around the use of artificial intelligence in making hiring and promotion decisions. And I'll just read this to you here. The results of those studies indicate that personnel decisions driven by algorithms are perceived to be less fair than identical decisions featuring more human involvement. They are subjectively perceived to violate procedural justice by reducing considerations to easily quantifiable performance data. Another way to put this, in slightly more plain English, less academic way, is that when candidates know that they're being evaluated or screened exclusively by some sort of AI or machine learning algorithm, they don't feel like they're actually being evaluated as a whole person. And they don't believe that that can take place unless there's a human involved in that process. And I want to show you some data from some actual studies that show this. So this is data from a related study that looks at the level of organizational distrust among candidates when they know that the hiring process was largely determined by an AI software. I think what's really interesting here is that rejected candidates, right, regardless of which process is used, felt like the decision was pretty unfair, and they have less distrust in how the decision was made. But even among candidates who were accepted, so candidates who received a job offer, right, candidates who know that they were evaluated via artificial intelligence are much less trustful of the organization that they're actually joining, even though they got hired, because a human wasn't involved in the process. And we can see this on the other end here, which is this idea of organizational promotion. So how likely are employees, right, or candidates likely to say to their friends and family that they should apply for this job, that it would be a great place to work? Even among hired candidates, right, those candidates where the decision was largely driven by a human interview and selection process are much more likely to speak positively of the organization, right, than those that were hired because they were screened through an algorithm. And so it's really important for us as HR practitioners to really think about being able to explain to candidates and employees when AI is being used, why it's being used, how it's being used, and at least at a very high level, what it's doing. You don't necessarily have to know how all the coding behind the scenes works, and really being able to explain this to candidates, to employees, and to managers. And I'm going to show you one graph and one little chart that I think will really bring this home. So in the same studies that I just showed you, they asked about the trust in the factors that were used to make a decision. And as you can tell here, in general, trust was low in the process when an AI decision maker was used. But when individuals really understood both that AI was being used and understood how it was being used in making decisions, right, they had much more trust in the process, right? So if you are going to leverage AI for its full capabilities in the attraction and evaluation space, being able to explain that can really mitigate a lot of those negative effects and ameliorate some of those trust issues. And we see this down here in a related study, which looked at the fairness perception of hiring decisions, right? The human only was rated as the most fair hiring process. But when you have human, even with an algorithmic option, so where an algorithm helped to do some of the screening, but didn't make all of that decision, trust was a little bit higher. So again, it's explaining, right? This idea of explaining who's involved in the process, at what stages, and at least at a very high level, how it works. That is a super powerful role that HR professionals can play in supporting the AI revolution. A couple of other things. It's really important to think about how to define and measure outcomes, right? These are there are a million different outcomes over here. Here's just 19 of those by the Academy to Innovate HR. But really thinking about, we're going to leverage all these tools. What is it we really want to measure, right? A lot of these here, right, are sort of traditional measures, right? Performance, potential, time to hire, cost per hire. But more and more, right, organizations are thinking about, we want to hire because we want to be more innovative. We want to be more creative, right? We'd like to see new products. So can we think about, right, in our roles, like where can we find metrics that will help us evaluate the outcomes that our business partners really care about? And so when we think about future directions beyond what's already out there, I think that there are at least a couple of things to keep an eye out for, right? A huge percentage of these algorithms are based on skills, right? So understanding both the skills that are needed for a particular role, or understanding the skills that an individual has expressed through their work history or through their resume or their LinkedIn profile. And so it becomes really important as an HR group to actually think about how we define what a skill is and how we verify those skills. And I think this disconnect here between business executives and workers is really important. This is from a recent Deloitte Insights study. And what they found was that, you know, a high percentage of business and HR executives are competent, both that they have human capabilities and that they know and have documented the hard skills of their workers. But if you ask workers, right, only 39% of workers say that they even understand their own skills and abilities. So if that's the case, how can they actually be documenting them well? And 29% of workers only strongly agree that they have a full understanding of the skills and capabilities of their coworkers, right? So that is, I really don't understand all the skills I have. I don't understand what the colleagues I'm sitting with or interacting with are. And so really thinking about, if we're going to rely, as many organizations are, of workers to update their skill profiles, how are we going to help educate them on how to define a skill and how to really systematically evaluate themselves as to whether they should say that they have that skill? And from the same study, right, it's really useful to think about, okay, so if you're going to be, you know, really lean into this idea of a skills-based organization to support the introduction of AI and machine learning, how are you going to actually document and validate worker skills and capabilities, right? So you can see here, right, up at the very top, right, are really sort of traditional ways of doing this, which is through credentials, right, like degrees, or feedback, right, sort of the traditional performance review feedback. Where we want to really think about here, right, are there ways that we can really do a better job of thinking about leveraging AI to help infer worker skills, to suggest to them what skills they might have, even if they haven't actually been able to put the language behind it. So really important piece and where we can really guide how this unfolds. Another piece here is really thinking about organizing around artificial intelligence, right? And so I think this really falls in the three main buckets. So part of this is the idea of integration. So you're going to leverage different AI technologies and data sources across the organization. How are you going to pull all of those together, right? Making sure that either they're all nested in a single human resource information system, or at least owned and managed, right, by a single part of the organization. So this is related to this idea of ownership, right? Who is going to own these particular tools and who's going to evaluate their effectiveness, right? Do you want that to be in a people or data analytics group? Do you want to have talent acquisition own its own AI tools, performance management own their own, learning and development own their own? What we really want to think about is, even if that ownership is dispersed, how we at least bring those together, right? So we're leveraging all the data that we have and allowing these systems to talk to each other. And the last piece here is my cheeky graphic here for escalation is to think about a lot of what we're trying to do with AI in the attraction ability space is to automate things, right? To provide decision makers with really good information about particular candidates, to allow candidates to get information on their status and ask questions, and to allow employees to sort of do some self-service and really map out their own careers with the use of this technology. But occasionally these tools aren't going to work perfectly, or because employees, candidates, managers have had their really sort of basic questions answered, things that they used to have to spend a lot of time on, they're going to then start to ask higher level questions. And so thinking about, do we have a process in place, right, to escalate questions, right, that the AI and machine learning tools that we're using aren't really that great at answering, at least just yet. And so we can think about putting sort of some decision criteria around there around how to escalate these. So where we go from AI to integrating human decision makers, really important to think about. I'm happy to see if we have any particular questions popped up in here. Okay, so don't see any questions right now. So I will let everybody know that this is just the first in a 4-part series. So we'll reconvene. This won't be me. We'll have different faculty leading these different sessions. We'll reconvene on May 8th to talk about AI in talent analytics and workforce planning. May 22nd, also at 1 p.m. for AI and how it impacts the employee experience. And June 5th to look at how AI impacts the performance management space. Thank you all for joining me for this quick 30-minute overview. I hope there were some good insights you were able to take away, and I hope it fosters some additional conversations after we sign off for today. Have a wonderful afternoon.